Hello everybody, welcome back to another video with Lim Reviews. So today we have another brand new smartphone from POCO, and that is actually in the form of the POCO M4 5G. Now this device is again one of POCO's entry-level devices. If you remember something like the M3 from previous, it did not have 5G, so the M4 now comes with 5G. In fact, the specifications of the M4 5G that we have here is actually very similar to something like the POCO M3 Pro 5G. So I would imagine that POCO is just really starting to refresh their M3 line of devices. So they have the M4 today, and it now supports 5G and a couple of new spec bumps. So let's find out what this device is all about. Now before we begin, in terms of the pricing, I don't really have the pricing as of now. I'm sure POCO Global will be launching all their pricing soon. In fact, I'm not even sure if it will actually enter Malaysian market yet, so not too sure about that. But based on the M3 Pro 5G, the prices are approximately like 550 ringgit for the base spec variant. So definitely going to expect this device to come in really cheap as well. If you're in other regions of the world, that's approximately 120 US dollars. So very cheap device here. Alright, so let's take a look at the device itself. As soon as I unboxed the box, by the way, it did came with some pretty standard accessories. Of course, you do get the phone itself, you get a casing to protect it. In the box, it also comes with that Type-C cable and of course that 18-watt charger. So all the typical kind of stuff that you expect comes in the box of the POCO M4 5G. Now, moving on to the device itself, when I first removed the plastics and all that, took a look at the design, I found that this design is actually quite interesting. I mean, POCO is really trying to make their phone stand out, even in the very budget segment, and I think that's great about POCO. We have this very interesting back panel here. You have this very large sort of rectangular cutout at the top back panel. It does not protrude out that much, so it wouldn't cause a lot of wobble on your table, and the lens is not really, say, completely flush with that cutout. It does stick out a little bit more, but overall I think it's a fine looking design. If you just put a little wave at the bottom there, you could make a smiley face with the camera itself. Apart from that, we have this sort of like matte textured kind of materials at the back here. The phone itself comes in multiple different colors. I think there's a black, a blue, and a yellow, so mine is obviously the black. And one thing I have to point out here is that the POCO logo is actually quite large again. I was actually hoping POCO would dial down in terms of their size of their logos on the back of their devices, but over here it is still very large at the back, so everyone knows that you're using a POCO device. Now the main point here is all about that 5G at the back here, and that's because now POCO's most budget phone, I would say for now, also comes with 5G, so that is great. Alright, so moving on to other sides of the device, on the top you do have the headphone jack still present. Moving down to the bottom, you have your Type-C port together with that single firing speaker. It does get fairly loud, but can't really expect too much from a budget phone like this. Moving on to the left side, this is where you get your SIM card tray. Now the SIM card tray here supports dual 5G and also supports micro SD, so it's great if you want to expand your storage even further. Now moving on to the right, you have your volume rocker together with that lock button, so that pretty much sums up the entire frame of the device. Now flipping the device to the front, what else is new here? I wouldn't say it's very new to POCO, but they actually have this sort of like dynamic switch kind of display at the front, and this is basically a 90 Hz LCD display which can actually refresh at 30, 60 or 90 Hz. So this will actually help to save a little bit of power consumption here and there depending on the kind of applications that you are using. So again, that is great to see at a budget price point. Now one thing I didn't really like here is the drop down dewdrop kind of notch at the top there, which looks very outdated, but again, can't really complain too much about that. Viewing angles are not that great because obviously this is an LCD panel. The maximum brightness is I think only 500 nits. You should do fine with watching some YouTube videos. Very basic display here, but still good that it came with the 90 Hz refresh rate because everything is just buttery smooth. Now moving on to the power, what's it being powered with? Well, these days we always see Snapdragon 680 actually becoming one of the most commonly used processors in like budget 5G devices. This one here does come with the Dimensity 700 5G. So again, very similar to the M3 Pro 5G if you remember that device. In terms of performance, it actually slightly outperforms the Snapdragon 680, so I think that's actually a good thing there. In fact, I did play Mobile Legends again on this device and it ran very smoothly, which was quite surprising. In fact, it actually supported super refresh rate and ultra graphics on Mobile Legends, and this is not something that you actually see on most other phones. So again, the gaming experience is actually quite alright if you're playing games like Mobile Legends, Subway Surfers, maybe a bit of PUBG and all that. If you're thinking about Genshin Impact, you might want to look elsewhere. Now moving on to the cameras here, the cameras is a very basic story. You only get it's not a case about a dual sensor, but you get a 13 megapixel main sensor, which is super basic today. You also get a 2 megapixel depth sensor, which doesn't really do much use. At the front, you have that 5 megapixel selfie camera. Again, everything is very low resolution over here, but if you're just taking some very basic shots, taking shots of your food, something that you see on the road, and you want to use a camera, you can still use that on the POCO M4 5G. Night shots actually look quite visible, quite alright as well. So yep, very, very basic kind of camera systems on the POCO M4 5G. Now last but not least, we have to talk a bit about that battery. We do have a 5000 mAh battery in here. It supports 18 watt fast charge. Again, very, very basic for POCO. And I would say that this phone is actually good enough for 1.5 days of use if you would use it like very sparingly. So if you are in the market looking for a spare phone, or maybe you are looking to buy someone the first smartphone, a kid or something like that, so you can actually consider buying the POCO M4 5G because I think it checks a lot of boxes. You do get the pretty decent Dimensity 700 processor, you get the 90Hz refresh rate display, a large battery. Of course, the price point should also be very important, so do stay tuned for that. But I think this is actually a very solid refresh to the POCO M3 that came before. Again, it's similar to the M3 Pro 5G, which is already very affordable. But if you're looking for something really up to date today, this is the one to get, the POCO M4 5G. Alright guys, that's it for our very quick video here on the brand new POCO M4 5G. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. Don't forget to drop a like and sub to the channel if you want to see more content like this. And thank you for staying all the way till the end. See you guys in the next one. Bye!